10 years ago, I fell in love with a guy who was a 2-year senior in the same high school and got pregnant at 18. We eloped and had a baby. After living happily with my husband for 10 years, he passed away, and when I returned to my family home with my child, my sister, Alice, treated me like a nuisance. Her fiancé turned out to be someone I never expected. A love of fate. The soulmate. Can people resist their destiny when they meet such a person? I met my soulmate when I was 18. It's a story from 10 years ago, as I am now 28. My name is Erin. I'm a single mother with a 9-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. I met my soulmate, Jake, right after I entered high school. He was a 12th grader at the same high school as me, and when we passed each other in the hallway in front of the staff room, I felt something and instinctively turned around, and he was also turning around to look at me. An eternal moment. I can't explain it well, but that's how I felt. At that moment, we fell in love. Jake said,
"You might think this sounds awkward, but I think I'm going to marry you."
I didn't think it was awkward at all, because I felt the same way. I was just an ordinary 18-year-old, not particularly beautiful, but healthy. Yet, at that time, I felt like I had become the protagonist of a story. Jake was so excellent that his admission to a national university was guaranteed. He said, "Let's get married after you graduate from high school, even though we're still students." And right after that, my pregnancy was discovered. For Jake, it was a crucial winter during his junior year in university. He said he would leave university to marry me and work for me and our child. But of course, Jake's parents were strongly against it. Jake's family was quite wealthy, with his father, George, being a senior executive at a large company. Erin is only 18. What about university? Don't be swayed by fleeting emotions. Think about the future. George told us, "You should think about getting married after graduating from university. It's clear that you will struggle being so young and getting married and having a baby." Jake's mother, Susan, also opposed.
It's okay. If we handle it at a hospital, I know no one will find out.
George said. When he said this, Jake and I decided to elope. Now that I am a mother, I can understand and feel what Jake's parents were saying. It's a selfish story, but if my child told me the same thing, I would surely oppose it too. But at that time, we wanted to have and raise the child together. We had no other choice. And I do not regret that choice even now. We left a note for our parents, packed our bags, and sneaked out of the house, heading for New York. It wasn't that we left without any plan. We relied on a person Jake had been interacting with on the internet since middle school, who was developing a smartphone game app.
No way. Jake, you were a university student. And your girlfriend is a high school student too. And she's pregnant. What a situation.
The person we relied on was a man in his 30s named Mike.
Well, I'm in trouble. I knew you were young, but I thought you were over 20. If I had known you were high school students, I definitely would have stopped you. But now that you're here, I can't just abandon you.
Mike said, holding his head and allowing us to stay in his apartment, which also served as his office. Moreover, he even became a guarantor when renting an apartment for us. Under the condition of, make sure to contact your parents when you settled in. Jake and I sent cards to our parents without including our address, simply stating, "We're doing fine. Please don't look for us." Jake began helping with game development at Mike's place, where Mike was astonished, saying, "What? You were still in middle school when you came up with that idea, Jake. That's incredible, to be able to program like this on your own." It seemed Jake had been involved in game development for some time. I ended up doing cleaning and cooking in our office and residence. Mike was pleased, saying, "This is a big help. It's always eating out, frozen food, or instant noodles." And I was glad that helping my mom cook at home paid off. Yet, it also made me miss my parents and feel a bit down. Then, Jake and I got married. We didn't have a wedding ceremony, rings, or a honeymoon, but we celebrated by buying a small cake just for the two of us. The child we had was a girl, and we sent a card with a photo of the three of us to both sets of parents. Every New Year's, we send a family photo to both our parents. The job at Mike's place didn't pay much, but true to Mike's words, "If the app hits, I'll give you a bonus." We received a significant bonus 2 years later. I remember being very happy about that, especially since I was pregnant with our second child at the time. The second child was a boy, and our family of 4 lived a busy yet happy life.
Maybe the reason we were drawn to each other was to meet these kids.
Jake said, adoring our 2 children. It was an irreplaceable, happy daily life. However, one day in spring, nearly 10 years after we had left home, Jake suddenly collapsed. The situation occurred when Jake was 29, I was 27, our daughter Madison was 8, and our son Ethan was 6. He had been suffering from an acute myeloid leukemia.
I'm sorry, Aaron. I've been hiding this from you. Before I started high school, I had a bone marrow transplant from my brother. There was a possibility of relapse, but I married you without telling you. I'm really sorry.
Jake apologized to me while lying in the hospital bed. No, even if I had known, I would have still married you. We contacted Jake's parents. His parents and his brother, Kent, rushed to the hospital.
Dad, Mom, I'm sorry for being such a disappointment. Kent, I'm sorry even though you became a donor for me. But I don't regret anything. These nearly 10 years have been truly happy, thanks to Aaron and the kids.
We knew it, because the cards you sent seemed genuinely happy.
His mom said, crying and holding Jake's hand.
Aaron, thank you so much. Please take good care of the children for me. Madison, Ethan, it's a shame I won't see you grow up. Thank you.
It was Jake's last words. While nearly overwhelmed by grief, I knew I had to be strong for the kids. For Jake's sake, I had to raise our children properly. We held a simple funeral with just Jake's parents, Kent, and people we knew from work since moving to New York. Jake's parents offered, "Why don't you and the kids live with us?" But I said, "I'm thinking of going back to my parents' house. I've worried them for 10 years. Understanding my decision, Jake's parents said, "Let us know if you need anything." And his dad added, "At least let us pay for the grandchildren's upbringing in place of Jake." I was truly grateful for this offer. I intended to work, but I was worried whether my income, having only a high school diploma, could adequately support 2 children. We agreed they would help until the kids finished compulsory education, and we promised to visit Jake's parents with kids during long school holidays. and then I returned to my parents' house with my kids. I had informed my parents over the phone, but they warmly welcomed me home after 10 years, and my mom tearfully embraced the kids, saying, "I never expected to suddenly have two adorable grandchildren." My dad said, "You've been through a lot. You did well." And I couldn't stop crying. However, Alice, who was 3 years older, said, "You sure have the nerve to come back after all this time. After you left, we had our own difficulties." She wouldn't even smile at the kids. Alice and I were never close. She was beautiful, smart, and looked down on me since we were kids. When I left home, she was attending a prestigious private university, but she got upset with me for rumors about her sister eloping at 18, which had been spread by a mutual acquaintance who had also gone to school with her from the same hometown. Alice, now 30, employed at a well-known local company for 7 years. Now at nearly 31, she seems desperate in her marriage hunt, saying, "You think someone like you, who only graduated high school and had 2 kids, can raise them properly? It's just a nuisance having you come back home now." Alice was upset about giving up the room she had used since I left for me and my children. Naturally, the children did not warm up to her. Madison, strong-willed like someone I don't know, would ask Alice uncomfortable questions such as, "Aren't you going to get married, Annie Ellis?" Alice hated being called Aunt and would pettily tell my daughter to stop, but Madison would retort, "But you are my aunt. What else should I call you?" causing Alice to silently fume. Though I felt sorry for making my kids transfer schools, they adapted well to the new environment and happily went to school. During the summer, they even stayed at Jake's parents' house without me. Jake's parents and Kent adored the kids, spoiling them a bit too much, taking them places, and buying them gifts, much to their delight. When I visited Jake's parents, they wanted to hear stories about Jake's life in New York, and I happily shared them. Jake's brother, named Kent, didn't resemble Jake much. While Jake was skinny to the point of being frail, Kent was more muscular, with only their eyebrows looking similar. Unlike Jake's gentle nature, Kent was lively and assertive, always making me and the kids laugh. About 3 months after returning home,
Bringing back 2 kids and not working, you're just visiting, huh? Well, with just a high school diploma, there's not much work you can do, right?
Alice said. My mom, unable to bear it, "Erin is contributing to the household expenses. You haven't given a penny since you started working. Can't you be a little kinder to your sister, who has lost the love of her life and is hurting?" Scolded her.
What? Really? But she's not working.
Alice was understandably shocked. Right after I returned home, Jake's parents had deposited $5,000 into my account for child support. They even said they would continue depositing this amount monthly. Despite my protests of, "I can't accept this much," his parents insisted, "Money is not something you'll ever have too much of. We'd rather you stay with the children instead of working, for Jake's sake too." When they mentioned doing it for Jake, I couldn't say anything more. I contributed $1,500 to the household expenses for me and the kids, kept $500 for ourselves, and decided to save the remaining $3,000 for the children's future. Only my mom knows the exact amount.
And you know, Erin has been helping a lot around the house. She's doing more cooking and cleaning than I am.
My mom said. Alice retorted, "Whatever. I'm getting married soon anyway." Her argument didn't make much sense. I'm not sure what's good about that, but if she's getting married, I think learning to cook would be beneficial. Alice, if you're getting married, maybe you should learn cooking from Mom, I suggested, which seemed to hit her nerve. She snapped, "I don't need your concern. I'm already attending cooking classes. I don't need to learn this poor quality meal." It made my mom angry too, saying, "I'm sorry for the poor quality meal." Nonetheless, it's good that her marriage hunt is going well. Shortly after, Alice's marriage was set. She's marrying a doctor, 3 years her senior. Uncharacteristically happy, Alice told me.
Hey, Erin, I hate to say this, but could you refrain from attending the wedding? The locals know you eloped, and explaining your return would be bothersome. You don't have to come to the family meeting either. Having a sister, who's a high school graduate single mother, is embarrassing.
That was so like my prideful sister. Both my parents were furious, but Alice was now assertive, who had decided to marry a doctor.
I need Dad and Mom at the wedding, but once I'm married, I'll be part of his family, so it doesn't matter what you two think.
She was ready to cut ties with her parents. It's okay for me, Dad and Mom. Let's call it quits on the family feud, I said, trying to mediate. Alice scoffed, "Oh, playing the good girl now," and stormed off to her room.
Annie is such a character, isn't she?
Madison said loudly enough for everyone to hear, making my parents sigh deeply. A year after I returned home, Alice got married. Honestly, I was relieved that she was getting married. About 10 days after the wedding, Alice called.
I'm bringing you a honeymoon souvenir. I was fine not doing it, but my husband insists on greeting you.
What? I thought I wasn't even supposed to exist. I was under the impression that was the case.
I accidentally let it slip during the honeymoon. I figured it was impossible to hide forever. It's okay now that I'm married.
It seemed she no longer felt the need to pretend after securing her marriage. Alice probably wore a mask before getting married. On the day they arrived, the entire family, including my 2 kids, waited for Alice and her husband. When my mom opened the door to greet the newlyweds, I was shocked at the sight of her husband. "Hey, Kent."
How dare you be so familiar all of a sudden? This is my husband, Kent, and these are my sister and her kids for the first time. My sister's brain is only good for having kids, so ignore her. Stupidity might be contagious.
Alice said cheerfully, thinking she was making a joke. But her husband, ignoring her, looked at me and said,
I thought it might be you, Erin."
Standing there was Jake's brother, Kent.
"What did you just say?"
Kent spoke in a low voice to Alice.
I mean, she's stupid and brazen, right? So you stay back. Stupidity is contagious.
"Apologize,"
he said in a strained voice. His clenched hand trembled.
What? Oh, you don't have to say that. But since he's asking, Erin, apologize.
"It's you. You're the one who should be apologizing."
He said firmly, directing his words at Alice.
What?
Alice, not understanding, asked again, and he firmly replied, "Could you apologize? This woman is my brother's wife."
What? What do you mean? Your brother, who passed away.
Uncle Ken.
Both my daughter and son, who have met Ken several times at Jake's family home, and they are very fond of him.
You said it yourself. Embarrassing, but you have a sister who eloped at 18 and had kids. Ended up with some weird guy who died young, and then came back to her parents' house. That weird guy was my brother.
What? No, I didn't know.
Why wasn't Erin at the family meeting? Why didn't you invite her to the wedding either?
That's because it's hard to say I have a sister who's a high school graduate single mother.
Indeed, if we had met during the family meeting, none of this confusion would have happened.
Sure, both my brother and your sister did something reckless, but my brother said he was happy for the last 10 years before he passed. It was Erin and the kids who made him happy. You insulted my brother too.
Ken's anger was palpable, and Alice was in tears.
I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't mean it.
Even earlier, speaking to your own sister like that, I've lost confidence in us moving forward together.
His anger showed no signs of subsiding.
What? No, I'll change my bad parts. Please don't say that.
Alice was desperate, not wanting to lose her newly acquired elite doctor husband. But the husband said, I need to cool off for a while, and he addressed to my parents and me, saying, I'm sorry for this mess. I'd like to talk again later. With that, he left, shrugging off her crying, clinging bride. Left behind, my parents and I were at a loss for words for Alice.
This is her own doing, but what a mess.
My mom sighed. Alice kept crying, and despite her flaws, I felt a bit sorry for her. She wasn't inherently evil.
Erin, I was wrong. Can you please talk to him for me, please?
Faced with my usually tough sister pleading through tears, I couldn't refuse. The next day, I decided to go talk to Jake's family.
My sons must have a strong fate with you sisters.
Jake's mom said, pouring tea. Ken, don't worry about me. My sister is strong-willed, vain, and selfish, but she's not a bad person. I want her to be happy as her sister. Please give it a bit more time. To my surprise, Ken said,
I know I shouldn't say this, but I decided to marry Alice because she reminded me of you.
What? Not only was I shocked, but so were his parents.
I've looked forward to you and the kids coming here this past year. But I knew you still loved Jake, so I was ready to give up and decided to marry.
I didn't know how to respond. I don't think we're that similar.
You are. The sparkle in the eyes when you smile and your voice. I thought it was nice and decided to marry, but I was wrong. I should have waited until you forgot Jake.
I won't forget him.
What?
I will always remember Jake.
But you're still young, and the kids like me. I want to make you all happy in my brother's place.
I'm sorry. Their father can only be Jake. I appreciate you as Jake's brother, but I don't have feelings beyond that.
Kent, you've lost. No matter the circumstances, proposing to someone's sister right after getting married is outrageous.
Susan said. With that, Kent was disheartened.
He's always been a bit selfish, impatient, and doesn't consider others' feelings.
After being harshly criticized by George, Kent became even more disheartened. Jake was really a kind person. I've never once seen him get angry. He never spoke ill of anyone. But I was happy when you got angry at my sister that time. I don't care what she says about me. but I couldn't stand hearing Jake being spoken ill of. Thank you for that. When I said that, he seemed to deflate and said in a pitiful voice, I guess it's no good after all.
Of course not. Besides, if you divorce over something like this, the backlash against Aaron and the kids would only get worse.
Susan, having heard about Alice's behavior towards me from Ken, came to my defense, which was a relief.
Strong-willed and selfish, Kent, you're very much like that yourself. A pair of similar characters can make it work. Give up on Aaron.
George even provided this reassurance, making it seem like we might prevent Alice's divorce after all.
Don't worry, Aaron. I'll straighten out your sister's character,
Susan said with a reassuring smile. I saw the surprising side of the always gentle Susan.
Thank you, Karen. I'm sorry for everything. I appreciate it.
Alice said this and went back to her new home. Before her marriage, Alice was ready to cut ties with our family, but lately she's been visiting home quite often, bringing cakes and sweets that my children and I like. This was unimaginable before.
That mother-in-law, she seems kind but is really strict.
Alice mostly comes to vent about her in-laws. True to the Susan's declaration, it seems Alice is being reformed. A strict mother-in-law is exactly what you need. My mother says somewhat coldly, but she's happy that the marriage didn't end in divorce. Despite having fierce arguments due to their strong personalities, Alice and her husband seem to be getting along well, which is reassuring. Honestly, I thought I couldn't get along with a man who demands an apology to his own wife like that. So maybe Alice and Ken are a good match after all. A little while later, I got a message from Mike in New York, saying that the new game was finished. It was the last game Jake worked on. I immediately downloaded it, showing my children, Madison, Ethan, this is the game your dad was working on last. The game featured a sister and brother, named Madison and Ethan. You know what? Yes, our two kids are models.
Dad made this. That's amazing.
Is this me and Madison? Wow.
Kids were amazed, staring at the game screen. It's the game filled with Jake's love, but I couldn't play it without crying and was struggled to proceed. When I completed the game, a message popped up. Thank you. Echoing Jake's last words. Thank you too. I was happy to have met you.